So we return to Lindworm, the world of Warcrow. My name is Hydra, and today we're going to dive into Warcrow, look at some of the things we know about the wargame, and reveal some of the unit profiles. First, thanks again to our friends at CCG Winkle for sponsoring this video. If you want to dive into Warcrow yourself, then I'd recommend heading to the CCG website and registering there for a pre-order. This will ensure that yours is amongst the first to be ordered when the 2-player battle pack drops later in July. If you're not in the Netherlands, it's not a problem as they do ship worldwide. You can find the link in the description. At the time of this video, the official rules for Warcrow are yet to be released. This means that the information in this video is taken from demo games we've seen, the Whispers of Lindworm series from Corvus Belli, and information which we've been sent by CB themselves. A special thanks goes out to Swiss Miss Gaming for videoing their Adepticon demo. Bravo guys, this video owes a lot to their work. If you've not seen it, watch this, then go watch that. A link is in the description, and give them a like. The fact that no rulebook has been released yet means that some of this is based on interpretation and, well, we might be wrong. So if you know better or have a different idea, bang it in the comments. Either way, putting this video together has got our hype level up around 9,000. Let's take a look why. Let's start with our first impressions of the game. Warcrow is a more narrative-based system with mechanics tied into the mission to add both thematic elements to the missions, such as environmental conditions within a turn, and RPG elements, for example, how you win a game having impact on future games. Warcrow is quick to play. Features like the inclusion of character cards with unit stats and special rules written on them makes the playing process slicker and easier. No diving back into rulebooks. There are also some quality of life elements like only having to measure a unit leader's movement, then placing unit members around them rather than having to move each miniature individually. This greatly simplifies movement and speeds things up. The game appears just as cinematic and bloody as its cousin Infinity, but does lack the complexity. That will see Warcrow being easier to pick up, shorter to play, and more forgiving, which we're here for. In a world where you can sit down and give your brain a workout with the Dune movies, it's nice to watch a relaxing Indiana Jones film. No, not that one. Not that one either. Look, I love this one, but Indy doesn't matter in the film. He just really doesn't need to be there. This one. It's a good one. Sometimes you want to have fun with a film, have an adventure, a bit of danger, an exotic setting, and some random body horror with melting humans in it. And that's Warcrow. If you've played other war games, you'll recognise some very welcome mechanics in the system. There are elements of Infinity, Star Wars Legion, and even a little Warhammer in there too. That makes the system look and act in a familiar way, but the way these elements are combined will give it a fresh and exciting feel. This is a new game, but they've not reinvented the wheel, and that is genius, building on a foundation of the good to create something great. Next, the basics of the game. Warcrow is a 2-player game, played on a 3-foot by 3-foot or 90cm by 90cm table. Terrain in the battle box and demo games looks less dense than Infinity. In fact, the gameplay we've seen seems to suggest that terrain is the canvas on which the game is played, so blocking line of sight, rather than the more intrusive third player in the game, as it can easily be with Infinity. Typically, a game will have 20 to 25 miniatures per side. In the battle box, you'll receive 7 miniatures each, which, based on the unit cards we've seen, comes to around 100 points per army, with characters being a lot more expensive than ordinary troops. So this would suggest that you would need around 3 times the starter box to hit the 20-ish model size, and assuming you need more ordinary dudes than characters, it would suggest this game is played around the 200 points. Seems to make sense. Each game of Warcrow is split into a number of rounds, and each round has a number of turns. The rounds are tracked on this little guy which, as you see, goes up to 10. In the demo we've seen, each round allowed each player to take 2 turns, activating 1 unit per turn in a I go, you go style. So if you have 4 units in your army, you'll activate 2 of those per round. This leads me to think that the number of turns that you'll have per round will depend on the game size. I'd expect that more points gives more activations. And yes, that does mean that you don't activate all of your units in one round. At the end of each round, however, you get to complete a no one gets left behind move, where everyone who didn't move that turn gets to move up the field, so they don't get left behind. You see, that's how that works. Anyway, also, there are units who trigger special abilities during this phase, which is pretty cool. Game time looks good too. Based on demos we've seen, a full game should be less than 2 hours when you know the rules, maybe even sub 90 minutes. Either way, not a huge investment in time, and with less terrain to set up and put away, that's going to be even more time saved. Right, now let's take a look at the unit profiles and get a feel for those. Note that the final versions of these may differ from what we have here, and if they do, blame CB. Also, we're not going to look at the game mechanics today. That's for the next video, sorry. So with that out of the way, let's take a tour through profiles, starting with, obviously, the dice. The dice are custom D8s, the same as you get in the Warcrow Adventures game. There are 6 colours split between attack and defence, as you see on this badly edited image. The top 3 are the attack dice, red has the most direct successes on it, the filled in stars, and yellow has the least with more exclamation and unfilled stars. The exclamations can be used to trigger special abilities and skills. You'll see that as the number of hits goes down, the number of exclamation goes up. There aren't any blanks on these dice. Those skills and special abilities that I mentioned are known as switches. The next 3 are defensive dice, again green being the strongest per se, with black being the weakest. When making a roll to attack or defend, each player will use a combination of these dice, with stronger, more capable units having a larger pool of stronger dice. Some units even combine the two, having an attack dice in their defensive rolls so they can do damage when an enemy attacks, or having a defensive dice when they attack, so to block any counterattack. This is the profile for the Bucklermen for the Hegemony of Embersec from the Winds from the North battle box. Isn't it pretty? Right, let's run through it. Top left we have unit cost, in this case 20, we assume for the full unit of 4 Bucklermen. Next we have MOV, which is movement with 3 values. Now in Warcrow we use a measurement unit called strides to work out distances. A single stride is 50 millimeters long, in case you were wondering. So the Bucklermen can move 3 plus 3 strides in a single move action, or charge 9 strides. We'll cover more of those in a next video, but for all you Infinity players, yes, each movement skill would be 3 plus 3 strides. That's not 3 for your first movement skill and 3 for your second, but 3 plus 3. Next up, W is for wounds. Each model in this unit has 2 wounds. For every 2 wounds you fail to save, you lose another Bucklerman. They head off to that warm tavern in the sky. The next stat is WP, or willpower. This is a dice that you will use for morale checks, amongst other things. I would not be shocked if this made an appearance in the magic system, especially when you look at the whip stat of magic users. But more of that in a minute. More is morale. This is how many morale tokens a unit can receive before it has to start checking to see whether it breaks and runs away. In the case of Bucklermen, that means that they need more than 1 stress token to start needing to check their morale. So 2 or more. That's when you start checking. AVB is availability, and is how many of this thing you can have in an army. So you can take 3 units of 4 Bucklermen. Next we have attack dice. This is how many of which dice you roll when attacking. As the Bucklerman has a sword symbol, that means it's a close combat attack. If it were a ranged attack, this would be a bow and have a range value next to it, as you can see on Dragoslav here. Don't worry, we'll come back to him in a minute. This is the switch, which you can use if you have the corresponding symbol on a dice when you make your roll. So for the attack, if you roll a non-filled in exclamation mark, then you add 1 block to your attack. Why is that important? Well, as mentioned before, some units have the ability to deal damage to you whilst you're attacking them. Hitting this special trigger will mean you can parry that attack as it comes in. All very cinematic, and does explain the hoofing great shields. Next we have the dice pool, and again a trigger to get another defense, but this time it's a filled in exclamation mark. Now when a unit starts to take casualties, it will become less effective. This profile is what happens when you have 2 Bucklermen or fewer left. As you see, the quality of dice and so likely output is degraded markedly. These figures are your conquest value. This defines how well these guys can take and control objectives. If 2 players both have a unit within range of an objective, then the one with the most objective points on the objective holds it. So far, it's mostly infantry units or expensive characters like Dragoslav which have a value here. though the Northern Tribe characters do add conquest values to units if they're attached to them. Speaking of, let's look at attaching units. First, this area is where all of the special skills and abilities are listed. As you see, for Bucklermen, it's not a big list. But if we switch to Dragoslav, then we hit a lot more. Of all of them, the one I want to focus on is Join Bucklermen Bulwark. These are 2 units types which you can attach Dragoslav to, and if you do, he activates with them, adding these stats to the unit plus these abilities, buffing morale and willpower, plus giving the unit +2 conquest value. Nicer. The keen-eyed amongst you will have noticed some other things too. First, he has a bunch of special abilities either when running solo or when attached to another unit. Dragoslav is also someone who can lead your army, so he has these command pips. We don't know much about them other than the leader with the highest number of them can get a bonus to the initiative roll at the start of the game. Are they like command tokens for Infinity? Can you swap them for cookies in game? Who knows? Lastly, you may notice these lightning bolts on his attack and defense stats. Well, that means that when you are completing an attack or defending, you can take a stress token to gain that benefit. For the attack, he takes a stress token and he gains an automatic hit and an exclamation mark to add to his final dice total. For defense, he gains another green die for that stress token. Now, stress tokens are risky, but if you have to make that kill or you really have to make that save, it may well be worth it. Also, that switch that he gets with the 2 exclamation marks, vulnerable means that the enemy has to discard 1 die of their choice from their defense roll. That can make all the difference between surviving or not. It's nasty stuff. And now we come to a completely other type of unit, spellcasters. Here's the Frostfire Herald for Hegemony and the Evoker for the Northern Tribes. Both of these have very strong willpower, and the Herald has weak attack whilst the Evoker is pretty potent. And let's look at their actual magic abilities. Now, we don't know the rules for this yet, but I think that it works on needing to make a willpower check where you can add in black dice to increase the potency and risk of casting the spell. Every time a spellcaster uses one of their abilities, they can be affected by Tinge. Tinge is bad unless you're Scions, and I think that the black dice drastically up the likelihood of more Tinge, but who knows. Either way, let's look at these guys' ability. The Frostfire Herald, on top of being an epic miniature, has some badass abilities. Fireblaze is a strong ranged attack with 7 strides range, which you can buff to 12 and add in a switch to cancel a single successful defense from the enemy. Hand of Wind, however, yeets an enemy who is within 8 strides, 3 strides in any direction. You can then buff the attack to give the target slow and stop them moving twice, and buff it again to cause damage if you slam them into terrain. So that's set them on fire or hoof them into orbit, however will I choose. The Herald can also move a Gale Falchion for free when he moves. Now, I have no idea what a Gale Falchion is, but it sounds epic. Anything that's a Falchion, I'm with it. He can also lose a Tinge token when resting, which sounds pretty handy if you've had a bad run of casting. The Evoker, however, is a different style of caster altogether. Spirit of Thermopleris buffs a friendly unit at long range for 4 turns, giving them intimidating 1 or 2 depending on how many black dice you add in. Again, we don't know what intimidating does, but it looks like it means any unit that the Evoker casts this on causes enemy units to take a test or gain a stress test. His second spell is a potent ranged attack. It looks like it can do a lot of damage, then be buffed to increase range or to hand out slow in an area. To be clear, slow means that a target only moves their second value when moving and halves their charge range rounding up. So an Evoker affected by slow would only move 2 strides per activation and charge 4. This state clears at the end of the affected unit's activation. Interestingly, the Evoker can also remove 1 stress or rally an Orc unit which has become demoralised and was running away, which is a neat trick. The last profile we're going to look at today is everyone's favourite miniature, the War Surgeon. What I love about this guy is he's exactly as awesome as his mini suggests. When on his own, the War Surgeon can target an allied unit, heal it, and reduce its stress at up to 5 strides away, which is awesome. But it's that science and not superstition ability I love. You see, if you can't activate all your units in a turn, then you have to have some around that you don't mind moving only during the no one gets left behind step. If you recall, this happens at the end of the round, where both players can move all units which they didn't activate in their turns. Well, if you leave the War Surgeon to then, he takes his walk, and anyone who he passes within 5 of, or who passes within 5 of him, heals a wound, which is cool. It means you can afford to leave him unactivated most turns, and as long as your force stays together, he can have a little walk and help everyone at the end of the turn, which is nice. Also, you can add him to a unit where he can act to deflect damage as it comes in, and buffs the rest action to heal all wounds. Assumedly, the rest action normally only heals 1. He also then adds an extra switch to the unit he's attached to give extra damage in attacks as well. He's an epic little buff battery. So that's the basics of Warcrow the Wargame and some of the profiles. Question is, what do you think so far? Should we do another profiles video and look at the Northern Tribes profiles and the last of the hegemony ones as well? Let us know what you think of this overview and the profiles so far in the comments below. Do you think we're right with our guesses, or do you have more insider info for us? In our next video, we'll take a look at starting the game, the anatomy of a turn, and what we know about winning the game and much more. Thanks again to CCG Winkle for helping us bring this series to life. Thanks also to our channel members and patrons for supporting in everything that we do. If you can, please consider joining. The more support we get, the more videos you get, so everybody wins, right? For now, we best get home before the elves catch us. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe and share this video if you enjoyed it. Thanks to channel member Joe Rogers for funding all the tea we're drinking making this, and we'll see you again soon.